the creation of the market began over a single philosophy: infinity. Before the apple, before the market, before humans, and even before time itself, there was the Tetragrammaton. Some would call it a god above all, a deity, or even a stern philosophy that the ancient beings before us had followed. But the Tetragrammaton has and still continues to exist, even to this very day. The power of infinity is endless, looping and reshaping, and sometimes ever-changing. The Tetragrammaton was born from this energy and soon became its identity. Knowing the dangers of such a power and fearing its own demise, it sought structure. And so it started to create. The darkness of the universe began to brim with color and sound, giving birth to the trinity of existence: life, death, rebirth. With every galaxy, especially at the center, a piece of Tetragrammaton's soul controlled the flow of infinity, allowing life to bloom even within the galaxies. The worlds began to form, and soon each world became its own specific representation of infinity. There were worlds where water would be plenty. Another where there was only air that would blow continuously in one direction. A world of lava and heat. A world of stone. And of course our world. The fullest representation of life. The Tetragrammaton had entrusted each world to his servants, each having a portion of its power to keep their world stable and in check. They were known as the angels, and they upheld the same principles of the Tetragrammaton, but each with their own view on its power. But not a single one went against the principle placed by the Tetragrammaton. This principle he bestowed on them was to never interfere with their world's cycle of infinity. After all, each world had its own purpose and unique life and death cycle. To change or alter this balanced repetition would cause nothing but chaos, and that chaos would ripple, causing other worlds to follow this unbalance, eventually collapsing the entire universe. The power they had was simply used to prevent changes from happening in their worlds, instructed to never lose themselves to the unnatural aspects of infinity. Upholding the balance was the only purpose they served. However, this warning fell on deaf ears to a particular angel. That certain angel was named Eris. Eris was the ruler and nurturer of our world. She was praised for her work in maintaining the balance of our beautiful planet. But one day, the power of infinity, naturally within each planet, went ballistic with energy. It created a new form of life, without Eris's knowledge. When she found out, instead of ridding this new form of life, it spared it. As foretold by the Tetragrammaton, the infinity within the planet would eventually lead to changes around the world. Eris, tasked with neutralizing these changes, instead became intrigued by this monumental change. It was a creature, a small worm, rummaging in the brown soil beds of numerous grass fields. She watched it eat the plants, grow, and multiply. And soon other creatures followed. They came in different sizes, each eating and interacting with the plants and other animals of the planet. Eris was continuously fascinated, her curiosity limitless. And soon the planet itself began to grow. Due to its increasing size, its gravity and mass affected other surrounding planets, drawing them near, and soon, colliding with them. Looking upon the destruction, the angels were upset about this, their planets now nothing but cold rock and debris. But a distraught Eris soon discovered that her world, filled with gaping craters, was actually still intact. She saw the core of the planet glow as it slowly repaired itself. And soon she realized that this very core contained the power of infinity, the same power the Tetragrammaton had imbued each planet with. And so for another 1,000 years, the world reformed, even bigger and stronger than it was before. Once again, Eris was overjoyed by this phenomenon and soon would dedicate her life to the knowledge of infinity. However, the Tetragrammaton, hearing the destruction the planet had caused, was not pleased with this. Infinity is not a just power, it is unbridled and broken and must be contained. Even the world you have looked after has destroyed the worlds of your fellow angels. I cannot allow this any further. This world will be erased. But Eris did not listen or wait for the Tetragrammaton. She would move her world away from them, outside their reaches from within the galaxy, now in the emptiness of space. Eris would keep the planet close as if it were her child, eventually finding a neighboring star to place it next to. Using her own powers, she cloaked her world with gases, making the lights of the stars reflect while giving the illusion of disappearance. And so her planet would once again begin to grow, soon becoming more complex by the century. Her planet began to make water and stone, and other traits of the other worlds she had seen. The animals become more bigger and vibrant with colors never seen before. And then a brilliant idea arose within Eris. What if she created her own life? And death? And even rebirth? The power of infinity was within her as well. And just like the planet, she also had the power to evolve and grow. Taking a piece of her inner soul, she allowed the planet to be governed by her rules of life, death and rebirth. By using the power of infinity, she created a being of 3 heads fused together in a single skeletal body. They were named the Norns, the Sisters of Fate. The Norns were tasked by Eris to reform the physical manifestation of a dead creature's soul, and only from a deceased creature by her design, never to create what they had never seen. So instead of the creatures living forever and populating the world, the animals would die eventually, their flesh and body used as nourishment for other animals and life. This allowed her to come up with more ideas for other creations she would place on the planet. As for the souls within each creature, they will be brought back by the servants of the Norns, molded and shaped into another creation by them. They could also be reformed as another servant, supporting the Norns' efforts at keeping the balance of death in check. The servants were the only thing Eris had given the Norns permission for, allowing them to create one thing of their own design. The servants were all ghostly beings, having the same face as the Norns, while being covered in nothing but a dark shadow. They each held a tool for removing the soul from the physical body. And so Eris continued to study her powers. The more time she spent with understanding infinity, the more complex her creations became. And soon she would begin to develop her own abilities of creation as well, a feat only the omnipotent Tetragrammaton has done. The star she had placed her planet next to had eventually gave out. And so she replicated the star, and made it bigger. She also made other planets as well. But nothing was as beautiful as the world she was given. How long did it take for the Tetragrammaton to acquire such knowledge from this power? Did it realize the danger of it, or did it simply fear its limitless aspects? And so with a smile Eris calmly deduces that if she's able to learn as much as she can, she could even be as powerful as the Tetragrammaton, and even more. Once again a great deal of time passes, and soon Eris has forebodingly gained an unprecedented amount of power. She is able to create her own galaxies with the flick of her finger. Her worlds made with such complexity that she smiles in accomplishment. But once again, she is met with the same issue. Her quest for knowledge would pique her interest in the power of infinity even further. But it seemed she had done everything the Tetragrammaton could do as well. Stricken with boredom, she thought of something that would regain her curiosity. And so she would do the unthinkable. She would imbue our world with her own power. She sacrificed a portion of her own infinity, her soul, and allowed it to be absorbed by the planet. No one had ever done the feats Eris had attempted, but the fusion of infinities was unheard of and never done by anyone, even the Tetragrammaton. And so she observed testing it to see any of its effects on the planet. The fusion of infinities, what would it do? And so she waited a couple of years. In this brief time, the Tetragrammaton had noticed a great change in the universe. He would order one of the angels, Lucifer, to observe and report the whereabouts of this disturbance. But Eris was wise to hide her own creation from them. She knew very well the punishment she would be given if the Tetragrammaton had found out. And so she observed the planet until one day a golden tree sprouted from the world. It glistened like a beacon of light. Eris, excited from this discovery, watched continuously as the tree grew larger and larger in size. Soon it stuck out like a toothpick in our world, making it easier for Eris to track it down. And then suddenly, after a single year, it bore a fruit. A golden apple. Eris, expecting something more grand, was not impressed, as there were many golden apples in her world and others she had built. As the golden apple fell from the tree, Eris, completely disappointed, left for her other creations. However, she noticed a loud munching noise. One of the creatures was intrigued by the golden apple. It was a small serpent, sniffing the apple for safety. After that, it took a single bite. Eris watched closely as the serpent's body began to glow. The creature growled in pain. And after a few minutes, its lifeless body laid motionless within the grass. Presumed dead, Eris wondered if the apple had special properties to it. Observing it, the bite the creature had gave it disappeared, almost as if it was never bitten in the first place. To her further shock, the creature, presumed dead, had raised its head. It shined brightly, engulfing itself in white light. Wings began to emerge from its back and 4 limbs grew from its body. It grew bigger in size and suddenly flew in the sky with a menacing growl. It roared across the world, firing a powerful beam into the sky. Eris, holding the apple, was completely awestruck. All the creatures of the world suddenly followed the echoing howls of the now menacing beast. Finally, the white serpent returned to the grassy plains, where it struggled to land on its new limbs. It falls on its back, not understanding how to move with them. The animals that followed the beast's echoing roar finally catch up to it. They all appear to communicate with the beastly serpent, but Eris was not understanding what was going on. Suddenly the creatures would form a line, slowly walking up to the beast, allowing themselves to be devoured. It seems the serpent was telepathically controlling them, allowing itself to be fed. Eris would stop this madness as she did not want her creations to be killed for no reason. She grew her body large, back to her godly state. She held the beast in her hand as it struggled, but suddenly it began to glow once more. It grew bigger in size, pulling itself free. Eris demanded that it listened, but it simply flew around her. But then finally, after another glow of its body, it communicated with her. "What is this? Are you the one who created me?" the beast said to her. Eris was once again shocked. For a creature of her own design to actually communicate in her language, especially one they had never learned, was beyond ridiculous. Eris questioned the beast's motives, but it only replied with more questions of its own purpose and existence in this world. Confused and shaken by Eris's powerful presence, the beast began to charge a beam of fire in self-defense. Eris, before thinking of guarding herself, began to ponder what exactly the attack would do to her. She had never fought in a battle or fought with anyone or anything for that matter. Pain was unknown to her. And so, bracing herself, the serpent shoots a beam of fire directly at her. She covers the blast with her hands, but the sensation of the pain excited her immensely. She felt her flesh sting and burn inside out, melting but repairing itself from further damage. And though she felt pain, it was nothing short of an existential experience. This once again opened the doors to figuring out the kind of power infinity was. Overjoyed, she smiled once again, knowing the doorway to knowledge this would open for her. She clears the smoke away from the beast's previous attack on her, completely unharmed. She tells the beast her name and who she was, mentioning that she is the serpent's creator. And after some time, while studying the winged serpent, she also gives the serpent a name. Ouroborus, the dragon born from infinity, was its official name. But there was one issue. The beast was always hungry. It gnawed at its tail as a sign of hunger. No matter what Eris created, it simply did not satisfy the beast. And the beast, unable to understand its own existence, did not even know what it craved. But one day Eris noticed one of her creations had suddenly died. Usually when a creature dies, they are taken to the death cycle by Eris's own assistants, the Norns. Being in charge of the rebirth cycle, the Norns would send their reapers to bring any creatures of the dead, and so that they would spring them back to life using their soul. This was the cycle of life, death and rebirth. However, Eris soon realized that Ouroborus did not crave the living, but rather the souls of the living. As a reaper was about to claim the creature that passed, Ouroborus had blasted the reaper away, devouring the soul of the creature instead. Without souls, Eris's life, death, and rebirth cycle was being interfered with the creature unable to be reborn ever again. But due to Eris's pursuit of knowledge, instead of punishing the creature, she simply observed it eating the souls happily. After a couple of days, Ouroborus's skin would become darker, giving a dark greenish look to its body. The layer of skin would then peel from Ouroborus's body. He would shed after he ate for a couple of days, becoming more bigger and powerful. This dark greenish skin was observed by Eris. The skin itself seemed normal at first, but Eris noticed closely that it was still alive. It moved like a slab of leather and howled incoherent noises, trying to take shape of the animals that were consumed by the dragon. It morphed between forms, crying out through the black thick viscosity of its skin-like appearance. But Ouroborus wasted no time devouring this shedding as well. Eris had realized that the skin must still have some remnant of infinity left within it, which would also explain why Ouroborus would even feed on it. And so the process repeated itself. Ouroborus would eat, gain power, shed, eat his shedding, and gain even more power. Doing this also made him docile and friendly enough for petting. And so Eris began to wonder. If Ouroborus kept eating its souls and even its own skin that contained remnants of the souls he consumed, was there a limit? Would he continue to grow more powerful? And if there were no souls left to devour, and he reverted to his unnatural beast-like state, could she hold him off? Eris had no idea the absolute danger she was growing on her little planet. And soon this chilling fate came to pass. Ouroborus grew to an incredible size, now mirroring half the size of the planet. Eris was unable to keep up with the beast's hunger, sacrificing too much of her power to satisfy the beast's appetite. She felt her power of infinity diminishing. Once towering over her planet as a god, she now found herself on the grounds of her world, small in size, at the mercy of her own creations. Eris would look in fear as the beast would finally shed its skin once more, with pieces of it slowly falling from the sky, like giant pieces of ash. Ouroborus soared the skies once again, howling for food, its hunger still not satiated. Eris would look in terror, pondering the Tetragrammaton's last words to her. That the power of infinity was not something to toy with, that it must be contained. That if left alone it would bring destruction. Eris, at that moment, knew that if the beast was not stopped, it would devour and destroy everything she had accomplished. But suddenly the pieces of shedding from Ouroborus began to converge. Now big enough to blanket half the world's skies, the skin began to change shape once again. It condensed and combined together like pieces of paper, imitating the same shape and form of the dragon itself. It opened its mouth, letting out the many cries of the planet's creatures, all in one harmonious howl. Ouroborus, in his hungry state, would attack and attempt to devour this combined, shedding doppelganger. They would tussle and bite each other, with their roars echoing throughout the entire universe. They would eventually leave the planet, dragging each other to neighboring worlds in Eris's own little pocket galaxy. Planets would collide together, forming huge atmospheric explosions, affecting gravity and the stars they were aligned with. Rays of condensed energy would shoot from the dragons' mouths. Their tremendous power would slice planets in half, causing further destruction and chaos. This unbalance could be felt by all the angels, wondering where this abrupt energy was occurring from. Even the Tetragrammaton, a being above all things, expressed anger, unable to locate the whereabouts of such turmoil. Eris watched as one by one, her creations fell to the might of the dragons. Luckily the planet they had left, in which Eris had remained, was surprisingly protected by the large golden tree that had produced the golden apple. It formed a barrier across the planet whenever an attack or blast was shot toward it. Eris could not believe that even still, the answers to infinity remained a mystery. She had also noticed that the dark greenish doppelganger, that had come from Ouroborus, was made up of all the remnant souls Ouroborus had eaten. It was as if all the eaten creations were taking revenge on Ouroborus as their last dying will, fueled by their unexpressed emotions. And the way it fought was like nothing she had ever seen. While Ouroborus thrashed around with brute strength, using its body to hit and rip the doppelganger apart with its teeth, the skin would split and separate itself, using numbers to overpower Ouroborus. It even took the form of other creations that were eaten by the dragon before. Eris watched as the dragon, who was feared for eating many of her creations, was now prey to its dark green shadow-skinned counterpart. But suddenly a powerful ray of light would subdue both creatures, leaving them frozen in action. Eris looks shocked and turns up to the sky. It was the angel Lucifer. He gazed at the galaxy, observing the destruction with shock. He was completely awestruck by the creations and unrecognizable worlds. And especially at the two dragons. "Eris, what is the meaning of all this?" he said, completely in disbelief. Eris, now small and with little power, would explain herself. Lucifer was not pleased, reminding her of his task of destroying any interference with the balance of the entire universe. He demanded that she erase this farce attempt at going against the Tetragrammaton's wishes. However, Eris knew what would happen if she returned to the omnipotent being. Looking at a distance, while Lucifer continued to observe the absolute massacre the dragons had done to this galaxy, Eris looked at a familiar object on the ground. It was the golden apple. Deciding between the destruction of herself and everything she had built, over her own attempt at survival, she ran for the apple. If the apple had given power to the serpent, what kind of power would the apple bestow on her? Before Lucifer could notice, she took a bite. Her body glowed with energy, now imbued once again with the power of infinity and something more. Her size grew larger than Lucifer, towering over everything she had created. Lucifer looked upon Eris as her power reminded him of the Tetragrammaton. Eris, what madness is this? Your power. What have you done? Eris slowly opened her eyes. Usually, they were purple in color, but they glowed yellow as she spoke with complete confidence. What have I done? What has the Tetragrammaton done? There is so much knowledge and secrets that were kept from us about this power. About infinity, Lucifer retaliates. Have you gone mad? Look at this chaos you've created, Eris. Surely you believe the Tetragrammaton's words hold meaning. You've been consumed by this power. And now there is no telling what the Tetragrammaton will do to you or this planet. Eris replies calmly, the Tetragrammaton will surely erase my existence, but only if you were to return to it. So I ask you, won't you join me? Eris, with her huge body towering over Lucifer, lifts her finger to retrieve the apple she had eaten. Like a pebble in her fingers, she calmly gives it to Lucifer. Eat this apple, Lucifer, then you will understand this incredible power. A power that even the Tetragrammaton fears. The taste of infinity at your lips. And so Lucifer looked at the apple he was given. He looked sternly at her, deciding his fate accordingly. He asked one more question. What will you do with all this power? What is your goal? Eris ponders for a moment, and then answers. Knowledge. My goal is to obtain knowledge of everything this power offers. I'm not aware of my true purpose. But I do know that I was not made to look after a planet. I was not made to watch for changes like an idle servant. The Tetragrammaton instilled those fates upon us. I will challenge my fate and become my own. I will be true to my desire and my actions alone. Upon hearing this, Lucifer closes his eyes for a brief moment. Eris reduces her size, now matching Lucifer's own. She calmly speaks to him. Even you have felt it, that burning desire of change. And the inability to do anything for it. And then, with a vicious expression, Lucifer bites into the apple. His body suddenly glows, as an explosion of power breaks Lucifer's body, reshaping it into a new form. He looks at his hands, feeling the power surging within him. Eris caresses his face, softly speaking to him. See how it feels. Was I wrong? Do you not feel more powerful? Lucifer looks at Eris smiling. I too have felt what you have. That feeling of desperation and inner turmoil. I too have struggled with finding my true purpose of life. Eris hugs Lucifer, pulling him close. So, let us build our fates together. And so Eris and Lucifer would create their worlds, feeling as omnipotent as the Tetragrammaton, diving deep into the mechanisms of infinity. And after many centuries, they both had finally created something similar to their own existence. Just as the Tetragrammaton had created both Eris and Lucifer as angels to serve it, they had created intelligent beings just the same. By combining a piece of the infinities, or souls, with a piece of Ouroborus' shedding, they would miraculously give birth to a being named a human. This being had the soul and body of an angel, the hunger of Ouroborus, and the emotions left behind from the shedding of the dragon. It was indeed an amazing feat, however only to Lucifer. Eris was not really impressed since the human did not have any type of power or interesting ability. But Lucifer, it was a life of purity and freedom, excitingly naming it Adam. Adam took care of the planet and even nurtured the animals he came in contact with. He also spoke with them, kneeling in their presence and requesting simple things that would aid him. And so he lived on the planet, which would later be named Gaia, the very same planet that grew the golden apple from the golden tree, which was also named Yggdrasil. They also named the golden apple, calling it the apple of Ouroborus. Even Ouroborus remained docile once they figured out a way to control the creature. They discovered that feeding its shedding, which still contained remnants of souls, to it, would reduce its need for living souls, which in turn would slow down his hunger. The dragon also reduced in power and size whenever it shed, putting aside the threat it had on the universe. But Eris and Lucifer had heard something bizarre one day. Adam had requested another human. Adam, though given everything, had described a feeling of loneliness. He wanted to share his accomplishments with another being like him. Eris was unimpressed by the idea, but Lucifer disagreed. He explained that Adam's thinking and thoughts were unknown to them, and so his every action inspired great discovery and curiosity, especially to Eris's benefit. Eris reluctantly agreed and personally provided him with another human companion in her image. Her name was Eve. Eve retained the same features of the goddess Eris, but simply in human form. Adam was overjoyed with happiness as the gods watched them travel and converse with another. Their companionship was as strong as their passion. And soon their passion indeed blossomed. Unknown to both Eris and Lucifer, human reproduction was not known. So when they discovered Eve pregnant, they were shocked. Eris, overcome with joy, was finally going to see something interesting. And so Eve, howling in pain, gave birth to a single baby. Eris observed the child, asking what powers it possessed. But upon realizing that it was just another small human, which also could reproduce and multiply, Eris's excitement suddenly faded away, replaced with disappointment. Lucifer was impressed by this discovery, offering aid to the humans. And so the next century, out of boredom, she watched as they all lived peacefully, multiplying and communicating amongst themselves. But Eris could feel a craving within her. Researching the power of infinity gave her purpose like no other. It continuously fed her curiosity, kept her sane. But now she was afraid. Was this really the height of such a power? Isn't there more? Eris would ponder, looking at Gaia. She became addicted with the next discovery. Her mind only focused on the bizarre and overwhelming aspects to infinity as a whole. And so this type of thinking would eventually lead to Eris's demoralizing experimentation. To ease her greed for knowledge, in secret and without Lucifer's opinion, she would go down this path of destruction. All to find the secrets of infinity. And so she would grab a single human, bringing him down to the norms. Lucifer was unaware of the rebirth process that Eris had created for the planet, Gaia, so this became her secret study. She would disappear for months, telling Lucifer she was busy with something. Lucifer, preoccupied with helping the humans around the planet, would hardly realize Eris's disappearance, believing that she was also hard at work maintaining the other planets they had created. And so, with no one to watch, Eris experimented with each of the humans she took. She would dissect and study them, melding their souls around and even feeding them to Ouroborus in spare amounts. She was particularly interested in Ouroborus's skin, especially its change of state. Before this discovery, Ouroborus would shed his skin normally, but after feeding him the same skin it had shed over and over again, it would now profusely sweat black-greenish liquid from its pores. This new conversion of skin to liquid would last until Ouroborus was fed a new batch of skin or a new soul. Eris collected this liquid, studying its properties and uses. She had deduced that the liquid, which was originally the skin of Ouroborus, had disintegrated and underwent a physical change. As Ouroborus's digestive system broke down the skin more and more, it started turning into a liquid. But even at this state, the liquid, just like the skin, contained remnants of other souls. She could hear the howls and cries of the creatures that were consumed, echoing through the liquid. Upon further experimentation, she had realized that the liquid had many uses from what it had initially provided to her. For starters, the liquid could be controlled for a couple of seconds, almost like a magnet. As Eris moved the liquid around with her hand, the liquid itself would change states depending on her thoughts and emotions. If she was upset, in an instant, the liquid would boil and become a blaze of fire. When she thought of life, the liquid became roots with vines and grass. When she thought of ice, the liquid became unmovable, chilled with cold temperatures. But she could only allow the liquid to change states like this for a couple of seconds, where once they changed states, the liquid would disintegrate in the air like pieces of paper. This also meant that the liquid was a limited resource that depended on Ouroborus. So as long as Ouroborus remained and was fed, the liquid he produced from his body would come in plenty. A new soul would just be the price for the liquid's production. This liquid not only satisfied and piqued Eris's curiosity immensely, but made her continue with her ungodly experiments with the humans above. Grabbing one human after the other, she would come up with the idea of making them drink this liquid in hopes of seeing something interesting. When they drank the liquid, their bodies had changed into many surprising, grotesque and unrecognizable forms. The first known transformation Eris had witnessed was a moving humanoid slime, black and greenish in color. They would wander slowly, devoid of normality and sense. Upon seeing this, Eris had deduced that the liquid was too strong, and if the volume of the liquid that was consumed had changed, could other forms be possible? She would order the Norns to keep these experiments within this realm. As she grabbed more humans for testing, Lucifer would notice the population of humans seemingly decreasing. Adam would also explain that Eve could not be found. Lucifer, lost in the dark, wondered what could be happening. As Eris experimented more, changing the levels of liquid she would give her creations, random results were made. Some would turn into black-greenish blobs, absorbing each other and becoming even more unified. Others would miraculously survive the experimentation, not only retaining their original bodies but incredible supernatural abilities. Eris would come to an understanding that some humans possessed an incredible will. That in overcoming the liquid's influence, allowed them to unlock power deep within them. This will was powerful enough to command the remnant souls within the liquid they had consumed, imbuing the humans with power beyond their own. Eve was one of the unlucky few chosen. In Eris's experimentation, she had survived the ordeal, unlocking hidden powers within her. She was also completely heartbroken and devastated. She would see the God she worshipped become an absolute devil for her people. Thinking Eris was possessed, she prayed for her savior and maker to wake up, even after Eris had tortured her to drink the foul liquid. But after a while, seeing her sons and daughters die in front of her eyes, seeing the people she grew up with become mindless hordes of humanoid slimes, she began to resent and curse her, seeking her demise. But she could do nothing. With the power she had, she simply could not match the power of the goddess. But Eris had noticed such strong emotions. Eris reduced her godly size to Eve's level, holding her chin as Eve gritted her teeth. "Do you hate me? Do you seek my death, child?" Eris goaded Eve. "This strong will you possess will aid you in the trials I have set for you. But if it is my death you seek, you will not have it." Eris says, laughing, "You're simply too weak, a mere pebble on my path of glory." Eris walked away, grabbing another of Eve's relatives by the hair. They struggle to break free, as their bodies drag on the ground. Eris would release their hair, now grabbing their neck and throwing their entire body in the liquid, laughing in complete ecstasy. No one in the world could go against Eris. Unable to find a way out, Eve would lie in wait, keeping her will intact, waiting for a chance of revenge. And so Eris's experimentation had continued for years, with Lucifer trying to figure out Eris's whereabouts. Calling for Eve, and desperately looking for her, with Adam on his shoulder, they both gaze upon the golden tree, Yggdrasil. As if by an unknown force, Lucifer touches the tree for no apparent reason. Suddenly both him and Adam are instantly sucked into another dimension. Lucifer holds Adam in his hand as they both fall downwards to the unknown, wondering why something like this is here. Another new creature, unknown to Eris, was born after forcing another human to drink the liquid. This time the creature was different from a human but possessed unnatural characteristics beyond Eris's understanding. It looked bizarre, was tied to a single emotion and characteristic, embracing its existence entirely. For example, if a human was a secretive person, after drinking the liquid, this creature would personify this characteristic or emotion, appearing dark and suspicious and saying foreboding things. As such, these creatures were wild and uncontrollable, listening to nothing but their desire and emotion. And worst of all, it reminded her of Ouroborus. She would label this being as a demon. The black-greenish blobs would be called shadows given their dark complexion. And the humans with supernatural abilities were no different from the regular ones. Wondering what would happen if she had released these new powerful humans into Gaia, she had finally returned them back to the surface. The rest stayed below, carefully contained and watched by the Norns. But what Eris could not foresee were the effects of freeing these captive humans into the world after so many years of torture. As they returned and came back into contact with the rest of the humans, some had unknowingly transformed into demons. This incredible will they possessed lasted for only so long, as their demon forms would now begin to devour the humans around them. Just like Ouroborus, once they had consumed their souls, they became more powerful. But for Eris this was simple entertainment. Lucifer and Adam finally arrived to the bottom of the dimension they were sucked in initially, only to find the Norns, who were shocked and surprised by their presence. The Norns send their servants to stop Lucifer but are easily wiped away. He demands to know who they are, as Adam searches the area, shocked at the blood and dismemberment of his family members. The Norns explain what has been happening for these couple of years, and explains the liquid Eris was experimenting with. The Norns show them Ouroborus, who is chained up next to a pile of his shedding. Suddenly the failed human experimentations who were kept away by the Norns call out to Adam, recognizing him from afar. They are semi-black greenish but retain some form of humanity in their physical appearance. They all appear chained up, unable to move, begging to die. The nuns stress to both of them that these experiments are dangerous and should not be approached, and that this is the work of Eris. Adam and Lucifer are enraged by this depravity and lack of morality Eris has displayed. Especially Lucifer, who feels betrayed and misguided by someone he thought was his partner. Did you really do it for knowledge? Or were you a slave to your own greed for it? Lucifer looks to the nuns. You will tell us how we return, or I will destroy you and this horrid abomination of a place. The nuns laugh. We do not fear you, angel, for we represent death and its reincarnation. Your words fall empty on our bones. But we will aid you, for it benefits our Creator's wishes. And so the nuns send their reapers to guide both Lucifer and Adam out of the realm. Finally they both return to Gaia, but are shocked by the echoing screams and madness heard from below. An enraged Lucifer shouts Eris's name. Eris, unbothered, is seen sitting on a little throne room she had created for herself above the sky. She has a glass container of the black liquid taken from Ouroborus that she was using in her experiments. Lucifer finally appears with Adam, as they both corner her. What has caused you to destroy your own creations, my goddess? Have you gone insane? My families, Eve, what have you done with them? Eris sneers, why they are down below having a wonderful time. You know, I never thought any of you were interesting at first, but after some testing with Ouroborus's own skin, I have created something that would provide me with some nourishment for my curiosity. Lucifer, enraged, shouts at Eris. Have you no shame? You would destroy everything that you have worked for the simple pleasure of eradicating it all. Are you not the same person who craved change? Who wanted to be free from the Tetragrammaton? Instead you have become the same chaos it feared. Eris, if you will not change, I will take the mantle and create a world free from both of you. I wish to build a universe with you by my side, but the power has corrupted you. Eris finally gets up. Has it? Or have you forgot your position? If I recall, I was the one who gave you your power. And Eris's body begins to glow, slowly walking towards the two. Adam notices that Gaia has begun to shake, with its weather changing to a cloudy grayish hue. Eris's powers are disrupting the natural flow of the world's infinity. But before Adam could return his attention to Eris, she suddenly grabs Lucifer by the throat in an instant, holding him in the air. She finishes, and I can take those same powers away. Suddenly the black-greenish liquid within the glass container breaks free as Eris commands it to flow into Lucifer's mouth. As the liquid enters him, Lucifer loses himself. He falls below, choking and coughing. His large body slams directly into Gaia's surface, causing an earthquake. As he's struggling to get back up, he starts to see illusions and after images of Eris. They all haunt him, as he shouts Eris's name repeatedly. He screams in agony and pain, the liquid's influence trying its best to take over him. Eris sits back on her throne room, with Adam frozen in fear. Noticing him, she calls one of the failed humanoid slimes to eat him. Adam shouts at Eris, calling her a demon. But from below, a single human hears Adam's last cries of pain and betrayal. It is Eve, now looking above, as she is fighting the monsters Eris had created from her experiments. Rushing to Lucifer's aid, she sees the god confused and bewildered. Eve tries her best to help Lucifer regain his consciousness. But the transformation has already begun. In an instant, Eve watches Lucifer turn into an unrecognizable creature. His skin, once white with purity, turned into a purple-red hue. Horns had grown on his forehead, with the color of his eyes now completely blood-red. But miraculously, he is able to recognize Eve. Though his physical appearance changed, his rage towards Eris and his conviction for freedom never did. He holds his hand out to Eve. As she climbs him, they both make their way back to the throne room. However, they are both too late. Adam is seen lifeless, almost completely absorbed by the humanoid slime. Eve, with her power unlocked by the liquid, destroys the humanoid slime in rage, as Lucifer, without any hesitation, slams into Eris, destroying the throne room in pieces. Both Lucifer and Eris float into space, hitting a nearby star. Eris shouts, "Excellent, so this is pain. And look how you have transformed. Tell me, what do you feel? Tell me everything. Tell me everything, Lucifer." An enraged Lucifer responds as the explosion of the star burns her skin. "I have no idea why I never noticed it. The true nature of infinity is chaos. You're not doing this to be free from anything. You simply enjoy the mayhem. You enjoy the change. You're not looking for knowledge, you crave it. That is your hunger. And just like Ouroborus, if your hunger is not satiated, you'll bring nothing but destruction to the universe. And I will not let that happen." Lucifer charges at Eris once again, plummeting her with multiple punches into other planets. But Eris retaliates, trapping Lucifer in a time spell. "You may have transformed into a powerful demon, but I was a more powerful being before you ever decided to be. The knowledge I have far outweighs yours. You simply don't get it. Change is needed. Without it, the universe will stay stagnant, uninteresting and undeveloped. But using our powers, the world started to evolve. No, I started to evolve. And soon I'll be even more powerful. The more I learn, the more." But Eris stopped. As she turned around, she felt a familiar presence. A presence that had no physical form but simply existed. It was none other than the Tetragrammaton. The spell on Lucifer was undone, as they both remained frozen in its presence. The Tetragrammaton spoke. "I have traveled far and wide to figure out the cause of such turmoil in my universe. To think it would be you, my child. Eris, I warned you before. Infinity must be contained. If not, it would ripple and cause chaos. Infinity shapes to whatever it wants. It is a power meant to be controlled and not left unchecked. And so what you have left, child, is nothing but chaos. And so in this chaos, you will be forever delivered. This is my final grace to you." Eris, realizing these words, rushes back to Gaia as her body slowly disintegrates. Meanwhile, Eve lays next to Adam's severed body, crying at her loss. Suddenly she sees Eris crashing into Gaia, next to the golden tree, Yggdrasil. Eve kisses Adam, running to where Eve has crashed. When she arrives, half of Eris's body is slowly fading away as she lies next to the tree. Eve walks to her slowly, now ready to deliver the final blow to her, remembering everything Eris had done to her up to this point. However, Eris suddenly points to Eve, as the same liquid that entered Lucifer now charges at Eve, holding her body in place. Eve struggles to move, as Eris moves her body, now pointing her finger at Eve. "I will not be erased, I will live on. My greed, my knowledge, my soul, you will have everything." Eris smiles, "You will be me, and I will be you." With a single bright light, Eris transfers the rest of her soul into Eve, as her body completely disappears. The black-greenish liquid also enters within her as she screams in pain. The influence of Eris takes over her body, forcing her to walk towards the tree. There the golden apple laid. Lucifer, chasing Eris, finds Eve walking to the tree. Happily he shouts, "We did it, Eve, now she will no longer terrorize us. Your people are free." He shifts his size, walking towards her to embrace her, but suddenly finds that Eve is crying black tears holding the golden apple. Eris, within Eve's body, suddenly speaks through her. "Oh Lucifer, don't you know? Infinity can't be destroyed, only contained. And it looks like I've found a good place to stay in." Before Lucifer could react, Eve, controlled by Eris, takes a bite of the golden apple, the apple of Ouroborus. As her body begins to glow once more, everything in the universe begins to converge to a single point. Space begins to stretch as gravity shifts towards the planet, and more specifically towards the golden tree, Yggdrasil. A portal can be seen opening up within the tree, revealing an empty space within. Suddenly everything is quickly sucked as reality begins to contort and be absorbed. Lucifer, the other planets, the angels, the stars, the galaxies, and even space itself, all of it, were immediately absorbed within Yggdrasil. The Tetragrammaton was completely shocked at Eris's power, able to bend and shape space and reality to a singular point. Then suddenly it stopped. Eve and the rest of the humans remained on Gaia unscathed, as the tree, including the apple, had disappeared. The Tetragrammaton would try to erase Gaia, but his powers had no effect on the planet. For the first time, the Tetragrammaton could do nothing but watch as the planet grew, as half of its universe, including its angels, were absorbed within it. The Tetragrammaton would watch this planet, using its angels to observe any changes. With no choice, the world continued as it was, with remnants of Eris's experiments still plaguing Gaia. It is said that because of her experiments and actions with the first humans, greed plagues every human being on the planet. The other half of the universe that was absorbed had continued on, with Lucifer and the other angels fighting Eris within. But eventually, they had all turned into demons and were trapped within the inner dimensions of her universe. The norns would keep the angels and the rest of the demons in check, keeping them locked in each dimension. Lucifer would eventually succumb to the influence of the cursed liquid Eris had placed within him, but held on to his hatred of both Eris and the Tetragrammaton as he was also sealed away. He believed they deserved the same punishment, and were not needed in his perfect world of freedom. And as for Eris, she sits at the top of Yggdrasil, watching the universe below. She decides to create the shadow market, where she has more ways of testing and distributing Ourobian water, which is the liquid state of Ouroborus' shedding, which she has been using the entire time for all her experiments. She believes that humans are actually much more interesting than she initially thought, believing their greed to be the key to understanding infinity much more. She awaits her children Adam and Eve, to once again see the outcome of their greed fully realized.